हरे कृष्ण। जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी, जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी, गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिव गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी, जय गिरिवरधारी, गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी, जय गिरिवर। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजन, यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजन, यमुना तीरवनचारी, जय कुंज विहारी, जय कुंज विहारी, हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा हरे राम। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितां येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टां स्थापितां येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, good morning. We'll be continuing to read the 30th chapter from the 10th canto. The verses we are reading today are number 24 and 25. The name of the chapter is The Gopis' Search for Krishna. I'll read the translation for the first one. While the gopis were thus imitating Krishna's pastimes and asking Vrindavan's creepers and trees where Krishna, the Supreme Soul, might be, they happened to see his footprints in a corner of the forest. Verse. They saw his footprints in the forest. Yes. Next one's verse 25. Padani vyaktametani Nanda sunor mahatmanaha Lakshante hi dvajamboja Vajran kusha yava tibhi. Translation. The gopi said, the marks of a flag, lotus, thunderbolt, elephant goad, barleycorn, and so forth on these footprints clearly distinguish them as belonging to that great soul, the son of Nanda Maharaj. Purport. It's a little long purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on this verse, gives the following scriptural information about the symbolic markings on the lotus feet of Krishna. In the following verses, the Skanda Puran states the particular places on his feet where Krishna carries the mark of the flag and also other marks, and the reasons for these marks. Dakshinasya Padangushta Mule Chakram Bhipartyaja Tatra Bhakta Janasyari Sadvarka Chetanayasa. At the base of the large toe on his right foot, the unborn Lord carries the mark of a disc which cuts down the 6 mental enemies of his devotees. Madhyamanguli mule cha datte kamalam achyuta dhyatar chitta dvire phanam lobhana yati shobhanam. At the bottom of the middle toe of that same foot, Lord Achyuta has a lotus flower, which increases the greed for him in the minds of the bee-like devotees who meditate on his feet. Kanishta mulato vajram bhakta papa triphedanam parshni madhye ankusham bhakta chittebha vashakarinam. At the base of his small toe is a thunderbolt, which smashes the mountains of his devotees' reactions to past sins. And in the middle of his heel is the mark of an elephant goad, which brings the elephants of his devotees' minds under control. Bhoga sampanmayam dhatte yavam anghushta parvani. The joint of his right large toe bears the mark of a barleycorn, representing all kinds of enjoyable opulences. The Skanda Puran also states, Vajram vai dakshine parshve, ankusho vai tad agrata. A thunderbolt is found on the right side of his right foot, and an elephant goad below that. The Acharyas of the Vaishnava Sampradaya explain that since the particular feet under discussion are Lord Krishna's, we should know that the thunderbolt is at the base of his small toe and the elephant goad below the thunderbolt. An elephant goad on the heel belongs rather to Lord Narayana and other Vishnu Tattva expansions. Thus, the Skanda Puran describes 6 marks on Krishna's right foot: the disc, flag, lotus, thunderbolt, elephant goad, and barley corn. And the Vaishnava Toshni mentions even more marks: a vertical line at the middle of his foot and continuing as far as the juncture between his big toe and second toe, an umbrella below the disc at the base of the middle of his foot, a group of 4 swastikas in the 4 cardinal directions at the 4 points where each swastika meets the next, 4 rose apples, and in the middle of the swastikas an octagon. This makes 11 marks on Krishna's right foot. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti describes the marks on Krishna's left foot as follows. At the base of the large toe is a conch shell with its mouth facing the toe. At the base of the middle toe are 2 concentric circles representing the inner and outer sky. Below this mark is Cupid's unstrung bow. At the base of the bow is a triangle, and surrounding the triangle is a group of 4 water pots. At the base of the triangle is a half moon with 2 more triangles touching its points, and below the half moon is a fish. Altogether, then, there are 19 distinguishing marks on the soles of Lord Krishna's lotus feet. Yeah, just reading them seems so detailed that the pure devotee gets the vision of so many little details about Krishna, and they are in turn revealing that to us. So this way, when we meditate on Krishna, we don't have to meditate on like either nothingness as the Mayavadis would do. We can meditate on specific items and make the relationship, make our meditation more personal, and understand that Krishna, that even his feet has so many markings, and there is so much to be understood. Imagine how much more there is for the rest of Krishna's form. So this is this helps us actually to make a personal understanding of, a detailed understanding of how Krishna is, who Krishna is, and thereby cultivate our relationship from wherever we are at this point. But cultivate that relationship with him. Like in the beginning of this chapter, like through the beginning of this chapter, we see like how the gopis are in separation from Krishna. Like in the rasa dance, Krishna chooses to disappear all of a sudden, and the gopis are remembering, like in the Gita, Krishna says, "Manmana bhava madbhakta madhyaji mam namaskuru." This is like one of the 2 verses which is repeated twice. So this is basically for emphasis that Krishna is telling us to always remember him and always meditate upon him. And in this verse, we are given many hints at how we can actually meditate, or rather, what we can meditate upon when we think of Krishna. Like this is giving us some hints. And earlier in the Gita, Krishna says like Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yati nasyastra shamshaya. He's saying basically like at the time of death, which is an eventuality for all of us, whoever remembers Krishna, when they leave their body, they at once attain to his nature, meaning they will become a part of his family, and the cycle of birth and death will end. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvata tyaktya devam punar janma naiti mam eti so Arjuna. Says like, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving his body, take his birth again. So this, the gopis, by constantly remembering, are showing us by example like how to lead our own lives, in rather than becoming absorbed. Like, how can we shift that absorption in our personal lives, in our personal feelings? Or he said this, she said that. So many things. Like, even today when I woke up, like the first thing was like, oh, someone disrespected me, and I was like, why did he disrespect me? And this is like, the mind is just self-absorbed, the ego is self-absorbed, and we have to move to becoming Krishna conscious, to remembering Krishna as much as possible. Increase that slowly and steadily. And it is said, like, as we chant, as we remember, the process of purification is taking place of our consciousness, and then we will come to a point where we cannot think of anything but Krishna. That is Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada would say. So in this verse, we see like the many markings on Krishna's feet are described. So it is said that when we take darshan of the Lord, when the curtains open at 8 o'clock, and when we look at Radha Muralidhar and Gaurachandra, we have to start from the lotus feet and then slowly go up as we see. It's a sign of respect, because we are trying to serve Krishna ultimately as a servant. That is our relationship. Prabhupada, like when he, because the devotees back then were so new, Prabhupada would only ask two questions, like, who are you? And the devotee or the aspiring disciple would say, I'm a servant. And who's Krishna? They'll say, Krishna is God. Prabhupada is like, okay, I'll give you initiation. So this is the fundamental understanding, that we as spirit souls are eternally servants of Krishna. And being a servant, having a servant and a master relationship, we try to serve Krishna by taking darshan of his feet and then slowly rising up to his face, to his beautiful face. It is described that Krishna's feet are as beautiful as Madan Mohan's feet. Like, he is the sambandha. Like, we are establishing our relationship with Krishna. Like we said, our relationship is that of a servant with regards to Krishna. And this, when we look at Krishna's feet, Madan Mohan, like, he is the transcendental Cupid, and he can remove the material lust, which is so bothersome for us. Madan Mohan can remove that. And as we cultivate that relationship with the holy name, with the deities, with the devotees, with the scriptures, that material lust is taken aside, and then it is replaced with transcendental attraction for Krishna. Even in the pastimes of Krishna, like Mother Yashoda would find out, oh, where is Krishna hiding, by trying to trace his lotus footprints after he has stolen butter. In Vrindavan, like wherever there is Krishna's footprints, the cows, the animals, the insects, the gopis, gopas, none of them, even the wind, they don't step or they don't disturb Krishna's footprint. They want to keep that sacred. They want to keep that alive in the dust of Vrindavan and in their hearts, basically. Akrura, when he comes to Vrindavan, he goes into ecstasy when he sees like Krishna's footprints. One more example we see is of like Bharat Maharaj, when he is on the throne. He says like, I'm not going to sit on the throne. I'm going to keep the paduka, the shoes of Lord Ram, because the shoes have touched Lord Ram's lotus feet. And we might think like, oh, this is, we are being too servile here. What about us? But the funny thing is, not the funny thing, the actual reality is like, when we become like really close devotees, intimate, and when we are fully surrendered, then Krishna is also ready to serve our feet. Like in the Rajasuya sacrifice of Yudhishthira Maharaj, we see Krishna is doing Paduka Seva. He's collecting the shoes of all the guests who have come. So that's a very, very menial service. And Krishna himself says, like, okay, this is the service which I would like to do. And Yudhishthira Maharaj agrees, because there is such a deep love for between them. So even Krishna reciprocates. And one time when Radharani is upset, then Krishna is massaging her feet. So you see that the serving mood goes both ways. When there is a culmination of our devotion, then we compete with Krishna. We compete with Krishna's devotees, like who can serve more, who can serve the other person more. So this is the mood that we want to cultivate. Like, okay, let me start from Krishna's lotus feet, and one day, not that we want service from Krishna, but that he does it out of his own free will, and we just want to serve him in any capacity. And in the first verse, like Krishna is, the word used to describe Krishna is Nanda Sunur. Sorry, in the second verse, verse 25, Nanda Sunur, that means the son of Nanda Maharaj. So Krishna also chooses to be identified through his devotees. Like God chooses to be known by the relationship that he has with his devotees. Like here he is described as the son, as the baby boy of Nanda Maharaj. And when we, like, if we look at this a little deeply, like we can see, like when we sit to chant, like we have so many identities that we carry within our minds. Like, so right now I'm sitting on the seat, I'm sitting on a chair, I'm someone's husband, I'm someone's son, I'm someone's sister, I'm someone's wife, I'm working for this employer, I'm male, I'm female, etc., etc. We have so many identities, but what is the real identity that we should have when we are engaging in devotional service, when we are chanting? Like Satyananda Maharaj, he gives this example that he says, like when we go to bed, we turn off the lights in each of the rooms. We turn off the light in the bathroom, in the living room, in the kitchen, and finally in the room where we are sleeping. So similarly, when we sit down to chant, we should also like turn off all these identities. Like, okay, for this next duration of time, as I'm chanting, I'm not going to be thinking of like, oh, he said this, she said that, this happened to me, I'm sitting here, I'm this, I'm that. Rather, we should come to the identity like, okay, I am an eternal soul, I'm Krishna's servant, and I'm trying to serve him by chanting his holy names. So this is something we can meditate upon, and as we enter into our japa practice. Time is against us, but I'll quickly go to the markings on Krishna's feet. I got many of these from a class which I heard online, and Mahanidhi Maharaj has published this. I'll post this link also on Zoom, at least after the class. Like right now, people might get focused on, distracted. So on his left foot, it is described that there is a conch, concentric circles, a bow, cow's hoof print, triangle, and a half moon, and a fish. The conch, like at the beginning of the Gita, like the beginning of the battle, all the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and even Krishna is blowing their conch. So the conch is a symbol of victory. So for a devotee who keeps his attention on the lotus feet of Krishna, victory is assured. Like whether we are convinced of it, whether it happens in this life or in future lives, but because we started on this path, the victory, like Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, like engage in congregational chanting of Krishna's names, and victory will be ours. And this victory is basically where the false ego is won over, and the real ego, which is Krishna's servant, that finally like takes center stage. The next is the concentric circles. Like it is said in the scripture that this indicates the sky. Like the sky is everywhere. Wherever we go, we can see the sky. And similarly, we know that Krishna is everywhere. Like as Paramatma, he is residing even within us. And if Krishna is there, his lotus feet are also there. So by meditating on these, on Krishna's lotus feet, or the concentric circles on Krishna's lotus feet, we can remember like Krishna is everywhere, and Bahir Narsimho Hridaye Narsimho, like Lord Narsimhadev will protect us from the enemies outside, and more importantly, the enemies within. Then there is the sign of the bow. Like this is the, whoever pays attention to Krishna's, the bow on Krishna's feet will become free from all sort of difficulties. In the Bhagavatam, like an example is given in the 7th canto, like when we sit down, again, like coming back to the example of chanting, this is in the 7th canto, 1542, says the living entity takes the arrow of his purified life, and with the help of the bow, the transcendental chanting of Pranava, the Hare Krishna mantra, he throws himself toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Next is the cow's hoof print. The verse in the 10th canto, Samasrita Pada Pallava Mahat Padam Punya Yasho Murare. So it is said like Padam Padam Yat Vipadam Natisham. So the suffering of the material world, like the material world, is compared to the hoof print, the water contained in the hoof print of a cow. So when we become devotees, then Krishna helps us so much that even crossing over the difficulties of the material world becomes as easy as stepping over small body of water, a small like hoof print full of water. The triangle, it represents that we will be relieved of the 3 modes of material nature, like Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Like finally we can come to the Shuddha Sattva. And the other analogy which is used is like the triangle is compared to serving with the body, mind, and words. So when we serve, we have to also use the mind. Of course, we use the body and the words, but the mind, like where we are thinking, feeling, and willing, from where that starts, like how do we pay attention to our thoughts, to what is going on in the mind. Then one more symbol is the half moon. It is like Lord Shiva has the half moon on his head. So it is described that Shiva has placed the lotus feet of Krishna on his head. Nitai Pada Kamala Koti Chandra Susitala. The devotees worship Lord Nityananda because through his lotus feet he can provide rays which is cooling like millions of moons. And finally, on his left foot, like the fish is given. Like if you look at a fish is restless. It's constantly moving back and forth here and there. So the fish is compared to the flickering mind. The mind is forever restless. Chanchalam, manas chanchalam astiram. So by paying attention to the Lord's feet, we can control the flickering mind, and we can repeatedly bring it back to the sound of the holy name, to our service, to hearing about Krishna, to chanting Krishna's names. So then on the right foot, we see the barley corn. So it is said like the devotees receive all opulences. One time, someone was criticizing the devotees, like, oh, you are all being lazy in front of Prabhupada, like you're all being lazy, you're not doing anything, you're not contributing to society. Prabhupada then just asked this person, like, then why don't you join us? Because Krishna is providing everything. He's giving the devotees all opulences. He's providing them with health, with food, with shelter, with association. Prabhupada challenged that person. Why don't you join us then, if it is so easy? Actually, it is not easy being a full-time devotee, or even a part-time, like working outside and trying to serve Krishna with the remaining time. Then there is a sign of a line. It is said like the line is like a rope which is thrown down to us in this well of material suffering. So we hold on to this line, we hold on to this rope, and Prabhupada and Krishna will pull us out of this suffering, place of suffering. There is then the disc, the 6 enemies like Kam, Krodh, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya, like lust, envy, greed, anger, madness, illusion, envy. These are all like cut down by this disc. Then there is the lotus. Like Krishna's feet are compared to the lotus. Like even though Krishna comes to the material world, he is untouched by what is happening here. As devotees, the more we become connected with Krishna, the more we become Krishna conscious. Like you see Radhanath Swami, who's here in New York right now, he's really like a lotus. He's untouched by what is going on around him because his consciousness is so fully absorbed in remembering Krishna and remembering Prabhupada. So this is like an aspiration that we can carry in our hearts. Like someday even we can become like that, like a lotus which is untouched by everything which is happening around us. Then there is the gourd, the elephant gourd. Like a gourd is a small stick which is used to control an elephant. And it is compared to the mind. The mind is like an elephant, which is so difficult to control. By focusing on Krishna's feet, controlling the mind also becomes easy. Prabhupada would say, like, you simply chant and you hear what you chant. Where is the question of the mind? So Prabhupada is focusing us, he's encouraging us towards becoming fully absorbed in hearing Krishna's names, in remembering his pastimes, and remembering his lotus feet. Then finally, there are a few more. I'll quickly go through them. It's the umbrella, which is like in the material world, we are faced with so much suffering. So the umbrella gives us shelter from the suffering. And there is also the analogy of Govardhan Krishna here, lifting the Govardhan hill. So the umbrella of Govardhan hill protected all his devotees. Then there is the flag, Dwaja. The devotees are like, the flag indicates victory. Like when a country is conquered, then the first thing which is done is usually like the victorious country will place their flag. When someone climbs Mount Everest, they'll place the flag of their country, like, oh, I conquered Mount Everest. So similarly, this flag, it indicates victory. Thunderbolt, and the thunderbolt is in the past, like the thunderbolt was a weapon which was used to cut the wings of mountains. It is said like even the mountains would have wings, and by cutting the wings, because the mountains would like fly to different place, they'll just like settle down and then they'll cause havoc for that place. So the wings of the mountains were cut using thunderbolt, and that way the mountains were brought under control. So many lifetimes of our karma is destroyed by this thunderbolt. By meditating on the thunderbolt, like the karma which we accumulated over lifetimes and lifetimes, that is cut to pieces, and so that it will stop troubling us. Then there is a sign of swastika. It is actually, swastika is a sign of auspiciousness, even though in this world it was used, even though it was not properly used, but it was used for the wrong purposes. But the swastika brings about auspiciousness. And then there is the 8 cones, which indicates like we are protected as devotees, we are protected in all 8 directions. And finally, there is the blackberry fruit. It is said that for the residents of Jambu Dvipa, like in Sanskrit, the blackberry fruit is called jamun, is what I understand. So we as residents of Jambu Dvipa, the only object of worship and source of shelter is Krishna. We recognize that. We have to realize that. So basically, this verse gives us like many analogies to remember Krishna. So the next time when we look at the deities, try to chant or try to serve, we can have some of these symbols, or at least one which struck us, and use that to make a solid connection with Krishna. Instead of trying to find pleasure in so many ways by absorbing our mind in material objects, we can try to absorb our mind in Krishna's lotus feet, Krishna's holy names, and Krishna's pastimes, and his paraphernalia, and his dear devotees. And thus we can stop the suffering which we are inflicting upon ourselves. In the Gita, in the 15th chapter, like this is Purushottam month, so we are told to read the 15th chapter of the Gita every day. It's one verse is Mamai Vamsa Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manasastan Indriyani Prakriti Sthani Karshati. Like we are troubled by the mind. Krishna says he understands that our minds are not really absorbed in him. So he's giving us all these indications on how to get out of our self-absorption and coming to Krishna consciousness. So thank you very much. If there are any comments, questions. Adipurush Prabhu has a comment on the laptop towards him.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, wonderful class, very complicated. So many details about the description of the symbols on the feet of the Lord. And these gopis, these girls are looking for Krishna. And then they see the footprints and they see the details on the footprint. And Prabhupada says, like, suppose there's a mother who loves her child. When she sees the baby's shoes, she thinks of her child. She sees the shoes, but she thinks of the child. So they're looking for the Lord. They see the footprints and they think of the Lord. And you pointed out very nicely how what we meditate on, there's a choice there. I know Prabhupada says from thought, from nonsense thought comes nonsense talk, comes nonsense action. So there's a progression from what we think about to what we talk about to what we do. So if we're thinking about the features, the beautiful symbolic features of the feet of the Lord, of serving the Lord, then we gradually begin to speak about the Lord and we begin to act, trying to do God's will, and then our life is perfect. So Mahajana Yenas Katas, the Pantat says, we should follow in the footsteps of the great souls. So these gopis are not ordinary living entities. They're very, very pure. They have wonderful love for God, love for Krishna. And we want to do like them. We want to meditate on the feet of the Lord and meditate on the service of the Lord, and everything else will come from that. Very complicated, many details in the class, which is kind of boil it down to, you already mentioned like this very nicely. Withdraw the mind from material subject matter and think about the features of Krishna. How wonderful is Krishna? He provides this access, something to think about, not just meditating on the void or emptying the mind so that it's just, dull, but to think about loving service to Krishna. More glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for your class.
Thank you, Adipurush. Yeah, thinking, feeling, willing. Thinking, feeling, what the thought that we carry in our mind. It's echoing actually. Hare Krishna. Okay, stop. Yeah, Prabhupada would say thinking, feeling, willing. If
Thank you, Balakrishna Prabhu. Great class. Jamuna Jai has her hand up.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for class. Really wonderful. I was just about the elephant, the mind being like an elephant, really struck me. I had friends that worked for Ringling Brothers Circus, and there are always elephants on there. And what they learned is that they would get the elephants when they were young and put a great big chain around their their legs. And when they're little, the elephant couldn't break away. But as they got bigger, the elephant could get away, but they were so trained to not break away, that little tiny chain actually held them in place. And I was thinking that if we begin to train our mind, we in that way, we just little by little train our mind, then it won't seem like this great, big, gigantic elephant. We'll understand that the mind is an instrument and it's not running us. We have the ability to run it. And so I was just thinking about that, to think how they were able to control this massive thing that seemed like there's no way they can control it. And sometimes our mind feels like that. It feels like this massive thing, but little by little, like you were saying, by absorbing ourselves, training it, we actually can. So thank you so much. I just had this image of this ginormous elephant. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is one way, like your example is that how the mind can be controlled. And on the flip side, like Sachin Maharaj in the Living Name book, he also gives the example of, because of our past impressions, we feel like, how can we ever attain Krishna, like with our conditionings, with our anarthas? And so this, we have this impression in our mind, like from childhood, that or from previous lives, that we are bound We are bound by Maya, we are bound by our mind, and we feel like this is not going to happen. I'm not going to be able to surrender to Krishna. That's where the Guru and Krishna's help comes in, and they can actually, like, by our sincere efforts, they can reciprocate. They will reciprocate and guide us. So yeah, thank you, Jamuna Jai Prabhu. Yeah, in the class which I heard, it is also said like the elephant, the elephant is difficult to bring under control because of its size and its strength. And but at the same time, it is said like once the elephant is brought under control, then it is easier to like train it in a certain way. So similarly, like once we bring the mind under control, like bring the mind back to remembering Krishna, or trying to meditate, or trying to even catch ourselves when we are distracted, then the window of hope starts to open. Thank you. Any other comments?
See, Krishna has markings on his feet, and those are tattoos, transcendental tattoos. That's where the taste comes for having tattoos, right, Jeffrey Eckler? Is that where you got that from? Is that coming from Krishna?
Yes, absolutely. Everything comes from Krishna. No, thank you, Prabhu, for a great class. I just wanted to add on to what Adi Purusha said about the children's shoes. I read, and forgive my forgetfulness, that it was a devotee was speaking to Prabhupada, and he said, "What do you think of when you see Guru's typewriter?" or something like that. And he said, "Do you think about the typewriter, or do you think about your Guru?" And the point being that, just like what Adi said about when you see the children's shoes, you think of the child. When you see an item that is sacred to your Guru, you think of your Guru. These stories and these imageries, and even the plays that are put on, or the dances that are done, all of these external expressions, these tattoos. I mean, I've got Krishna tattooed on my body, but all of these things are linking us. They're yoking us to the Lord, or to the devotees of the Lord. And as we hear and remember, it just brings us closer. It's a beautiful thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeffrey Prabhu.
Bhima Prabhu.
Bhima Prabhu, can you hear us?
He's there. He's just increasing our separation from him. He wants to.
Prabhu. A little bit late to the conversation in regards, but specifically about the elephant and the chain, I sort of, I feel that it's the chain that's the mind, and that the elephant, when young, is controlled by the chain. But when we, in the association of devotees, and when we grow in Krishna consciousness, our desire, the elephant would be the desire. One thing working around animals is that they do what they desire, or they try to do what they desire. If one of my horses desires to get past me, no matter what I have holding him back, he will, or she will, most often a she, will do. And so if we really desire, as Prabhupada said, everything is situated on desire. We talk about the mind and training and discipline and all that, but if we have a why, if we know why we're trying to remember Krishna, if we know why there's all this beauty in the world, and all this ugliness, if we know why we need to navigate ourselves through it, then we can break that chain. So the mind is the mind is the chain, and we have the ability, if we have the desire, like an elephant, to just snap it and to move on and not be controlled by our mind. So that's what I wanted to say in regards to reversing the metaphor. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. Yes, we want to replace our material desires with Krishna conscious desires. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. The darshan is opening. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Balakrishna Prabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna. Damodar Priya, we're going to leave your comment for the afterglow. Okay, camera's on your knees. I like how Bhima Prabhu cannot tolerate an analogy where an animal is used negatively. He immediately reversed it. Because Bhima Prabhu knows the shloka by heart, 518. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, like Krishnadaya Prabhu, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. outcast. Okay. Andrea, Damodar Priya, you have your hand raised. Would you like to make your comment now?
Yes, Hare Krishna. I'm in the same vein as Bhima Prabhu, and I wrote in the chat how it really hurts my heart that I understand that it's a metaphor and it's analogy, but it hurts my heart to kind of hear about the ideas of like baby elephants being chained up and, you know, the elephant codes and things like that. So I wanted to kind of be like the one to give the disclaimer that though this analogy and metaphor is being used, that as devotees, we don't condone the chaining of baby elephants who were taken away from their mothers and living in the wild. The mothers were killed to get those baby elephants to then, you know, abuse them and train them to entertain humans. So it was for sense enjoyment. These elephants were taken away from the wild and taken away from their families, and their families were killed for the sense enjoyment of humans. So it's actually a really negative thing. And so we're not condoning it. It's just being used as an analogy. But it's good for us to be aware that we as devotees practice ahimsa, and those kind of practices of taking wild animals away from their natural environments is not really in line with bhakti. So just for us to be aware of that, I really appreciate Bhima kind of bringing that in, and I appreciate you using that Bhagavad Gita verse as well. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Damodar Priya. If you see a baby elephant, don't abuse it. Give it prasadam and chant the verse 518 into its ear. Just put it up and chant right in there. Okay, would anyone else like to say anything? Poppy C, nice to see you. Venetia, where's Whiskey? Is he listening? How is his sadhana? Can you chant in his? He was mentioned in this verse. There are some dog eaters. I'm sorry, please mute me, somebody. Otherwise, I'll say something inappropriate. We'll have Whiskey Das without, we'll have all the animals in this class. Okay. Hare Krishna. Love you all.